All right, let's jump right into it. Again, this is a lot of talking and not much to demonstrate, so I want to be able to show like what's happening here. Okay, so what are we talking about? What is this agentic commerce, right? I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about it. What does it mean to be able to sell? And right now we're going to focus on ChatGPT because that's really the main one that's been launched through Shopify's partnership with them. Shopify is also going to be partnering with Gemini and Copilot and all of the others. But for this particular discussion, we're really going to focus on what they're doing with ChatGPT. So what does it mean? Is this live? Can we use it? That's the first question everybody asks. Yes, officially as of last month, the Agentic storefronts are live. The Agentic capabilities is live. So it is something that's part of Shopify. If you have a Shopify plan already, this is there, and we'll talk about kind of how that works. If you don't have a Shopify plan and you get any of the Shopify plans that are out there, this is going to be part of it. There is also an agentic only storefront plan. So if you have something else and you want to kind of tap into it, there is an exclusive agentic plan that also exists. But one of the first rumors I want to kind of fix or misconceptions is that do you somehow need a separate agentic plan with your existing Shopify plan? No, you don't. If you already are on Shopify, you can tap into this. You don't need to get one of those other agentic plans that you may see that are available. If you don't have Shopify and you want to tap into this and you don't want to change your other whatever else you might be using, then get the agentic plan and then you can use that. So that's the first question about that is. So what do you get with the agentic services that are there, right? Shopify, like I said, as we mentioned, has this agreement with ChatGPT where your products can become discoverable, right? They're instantly discoverable. It's part of what they've done, and that's handled through this thing called the Shopify catalog. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's the first thing you need to know. If you've got Shopify, you can tap into this through this Shopify catalog paradigm that they have set up. So how does this work, right? What is the process for it? And how can you tap into something like this, right? So the Shopify's agentic catalog and their agentic storefront first is all about categorization, right? If you've seen some of our other previous OTs, we've shown you that inside of the sales channels, you can jump into the sales channel area and kind of create a structured mapping for your products. And we'll show this again in a moment, but that's the first important piece. Let's make sure we've got this categorization set up, your products are properly cataloged correctly, and that's gonna allow you to say, okay, I now have a structure that works. Once you have a structure that works, now the AI services that are out there, and for this thing, again, we'll talk about ChatGPT, as people start talking and asking about products and things like that, the hope is that the AI has this wealth of knowledge of all these existing products that are out there, and it's able to recommend. And because of this deal between OpenAI and Shopify, every single Shopify store that's out there is a potential candidate for a recommendation. Now, how well is that going to work? We'll talk about that in a moment. It's about how well do you have your data structured? Because if you think about it, how many Shopify retailers are there? How many products are there? Millions, hundreds of millions, right? We're talking about a lot. So this pool from which ChatGPT has to call information is very vast. So the quality of your data, the quality of your information is going to be extremely important.
And the uniqueness, I guess I'll just throw that out there too.
Yes.
For folks that are selling products that are also available on many other websites, if you're drop shipping or otherwise tapping into that supplier's catalog and their product information. There's a lot of people using the same descriptions and titles for the same pair of shoes across the same 10,000 websites. So, usefulness of the information is one thing, but also uniqueness. And that's always been the case, but I think now even more than ever.
Very much so, and we'll definitely be talking about that, but excellent call out, right? Again, if you have a pool of hundreds of millions of products and somebody's looking for something, the more unique and specific you can be, the better chance that you are going to get brought into those results. Think about it. If someone's like, hey, I'm looking for a pair of, brown comfortable shoes. How many people have brown comfortable shoes, right? What does that mean? You have to find some way of definitely standing out. And we'll talk about what that needs to be in just a bit, but I want to get back to how this process works, right? So step one, organize your products, create a catalog, make sure you've got some structure. People are going to then ask ChatGPT to try to find some products, right? So what happens next, right? What happens when some products are surfaced? The idea here, and kind of the killer app, if you would, is this checkout process. And there's two things that are going to happen, right? If you are on mobile, you're going to get this kind of mobile app browser checkout process. It's not going to happen inside of ChatGPT anymore. We'll talk about that again in a second, right? There's a little bit of a shift that happened last month that really kind of threw some things into disarray, and there's a little bit of kind of catch up and information understanding that needs to happen. So in the new world, right, officially here in the end of April 2026, there is no longer going to be an in AI, is that a word? Inside the actual model checkout. The checkout happens outside. So if you're on a mobile app, you're going to get the mobile app browser. If you're on desktop, a new tab is going to open up and it's going to send you over to the Shopify store for checkout. Again, it's not happening inside of ChatGPT anymore. That is gone. And this was one thing that used to be the way that things were going to work, right? OpenAI decided, and I just brought up this article just in case anybody hasn't heard about this, right? Back in March, OpenAI said, nope, we actually don't want this to happen. We don't want to somehow create a checkout process inside of the actual chat. As cool and as nice as and integrated as that might sound like, I kind of understand why they kind of pulled back on that. So this is an important thing to mention here. The fact that this pivot, which just happened last month, is why some of the information out there about this, agentic storefront is a little bit muddled. And again, what we're hoping to clear up is, where are we now today in this process? So checking out inside of ChatGPT doesn't work anymore. That's not the path they're going to go down. Now, again, if some of you have been following this, you may have seen some of these different screens, right? The hope was that there was going to be this tool called this ChatGPT Instant Checkout. And this is a couple screenshots of what it looked like, back in the earlier this year, when this was the route that they were going to go. You were going to have this instant checkout sales channel. You were going to be able to go into it. You were going to be able to go into your settings here, have this instant checkout feature, and be able to kind of set up your products that way, and then the checkout happens inside of ChatGPT. Because of this change, that's no longer the case. So again, as I mentioned before about this being more of a behind the scenes thing, this was kind of a great thing that you could go to a product, you could go to a sales channel, you could turn it on, you can control it that way. There was very much a kind of UI UX for it, and that has pivoted a little bit. So for right now, this old thing that existed as far as instant checkout, that's not really the way that it's going to happen. Now there's some stuff that Shopify is working on, and we can't necessarily say everything about it, but they are working on some stuff that some of this may subtly change. But for right here, right now, this instant checkout is not something you're going to be relying on anymore, because you're no longer checking out from inside of Shopify. You are checking out, as we mentioned before, either in a new tab or inside of a browser. But when that checkout does happen, you'll know, like full attribution. So it'll look like any regular order that's coming inside of your Shopify store, with it saying, hey, this order came from ChatGPT or from Copilot or whatever the case might be. So just like those of you who do orders through like maybe POS and you do orders through your online store, the attribution says this order came from the online store, this order came from Amazon, this order came from POS. You are now going to see this order came from ChatGPT. So even though it kind of starts over here in the ChatGPT window, and then it goes through this checkout process, ultimately it does end up coming back to you in your Shopify store. So it all should make sense. It should all be kind of contextualized, if you would.
Yeah, and recommendation for those established sellers that are joining us today, if you haven't already been kind of keeping an eye on this, but run a report to see, if you're already getting sales from ChatGPT and rewards, so you can start to track the impact that it's having at you at baseline. And that way you can really start to understand what the impact is as you start making changes or improvements over time, and really just kind of have a full visibility of how this has impacted your business from the very beginning.
Yeah, great topic, great point. And we actually, at the end of this, I'll show you some suggestions of how you can do that, some prompts that you can use. But yeah, great point from Patrick, right? Step one, really, if you're not sure of, is, well, how do I even know if I'm in here, right? Well, you should run some tests, right? Definitely.
Yeah, we did get a question come in on that front too. The question is, what sales channel is, quote, Shopify GraphQL app? unquote. Is that for Sidekick or another AI?
Yeah, great question. Not really related to AI. That is literally Shopify's GraphQL app. If you are a developer, like we are developer nerds, it's to help you do API calls. Has nothing to do with AI, has nothing to do with Sidekick. It is an app that developers use, or if you just wanted to test out GraphQL calls, that's what that's all about. So don't worry, you're not missing something if you don't have it. It has nothing to do with AI. It's more of a kind of a nerdy developer thing. Cool. So we've talked from a high level about these storefronts and how they work, and it's very conceptual, right? So why don't we just go to ChatGPT and I'll show you what it looks like. And that's, I think, is really going to help put this together. So in order for saving time, just before this, I went ahead and ran a quick little ChatGPT prompt saying, hey, and I happen to know that Sephora is one of the stores on Shopify who has already implemented this. So I was able to use them as an example. So I am just prompting, right? I'm just somebody in ChatGPT and I'm saying, hey, can you recommend a facial cream for me I have sensitive skin and I want a good facial cream, right? And I love Sephora. And so ChatGPT thinks for a while, and this is exactly what hopefully you can do with your products. It's going to think about it. It's going to give you a little bit of context here. It's going to say why it's choosing these products. And this is important, right? Look at this detail that's here. That's an important thing, and we'll get to it in a moment, because as Patrick had mentioned earlier, it's not just about having a product, but it's about having a product that gives context. And you can see this text that's being delivered here up on top. That is context. The reason these products were brought up to my prompt when I'm saying, hey, I've got sensitive skin and I want to have a good cleanser, is because these products were properly contextualized with that detail, with that information. Back in the day in an SEO world, you might have tried to had, keywords of like facial cleanser or cream or something like that. Now you want stories. You want to build, as much context around it. This is a great product for sensitive skin because we use certain kind of whatever, So that's why these products were brought in. They have the right number of context. And so because these products and because the catalog has been created, look at this. It's bringing in the product information. It's bringing in the picture. It's bringing in the title, the cost. All this stuff is because it's calling it from Shopify's catalog. And so now the experience of shopping is here inside of my ChatGPT. So let's say, for example, that I'm like, great, this first one looks awesome. I'm going to click on it. You'll see this little thing slides in from the right, and now I'm getting even more context. Look at this. What to know about the product, what people are saying about the product, what Sephora says about the cleansing, right? So all of this great wealth of information, it's not making it up, right? The LLM models aren't just deciding, hey, we're going to make up something. They're going to say, you know what? I'm going to grab all of this context from the Shopify store that you, the merchant, have hopefully provided to me, and I'm going to pull it right here inside of this sidebar. So this is why when Patrick mentioned earlier, the game isn't just about keywords anymore. It's about proper GEO, generative engine optimization. This is the reason why. This is how it figures out context. So if you want your products to do what's happening here, you need to give it its appropriate context. And so now when I say, you know what, this is what I want, I love Sephora, I want to buy it, my next stage is to go here, click visit, and hey, take a look. I am now in Shopify for this product, and I'm ready to buy and I'm ready to check out, right? And this is what everybody wants, right? This is exactly what you want. ChatGPT giving you recommendations and sending you right over to the product. So this is what it looks like. So this is a question a lot of people ask, which is, well, what does it look like? What does the process look like inside of ChatGPT? This is exactly it. And you can repeat this process with anything. I'm looking for shoes, I'm looking for boots, I'm looking for whatever, right? This is what it looks like. And I think a lot of people haven't seen this yet. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more context in terms of how your products are going to look inside of ChatGPT and what information is going to get extracted and how it's going to be shown. So I'll pause here for a moment in case any questions have popped up about anything.
There was one here. I'll just read it verbatim. So I've heard you say two different things about the Shopify catalog. To clarify, the Shopify catalog is any business and their products. So does it pull from all my offering, and or should I make a separate catalog or collection of items that the Shopify catalog could feature in an AI response?
Yeah, great question. So, if some of you have been kind of regular viewers to our Shopify OT, you may remember in the past we've shown you about the Agentic storefront setting. So I'm going to pop over to Shopify now and take you down into the settings here, right? You click on settings, you go to your sales channels, and this may look very familiar to people, right? There is this thing here that says, hey, Agentic storefronts, I need to create my schema. I'll click on it right now. I need to create my Shopify catalog mapping, right? So this is where you are mapping your products to the needs of ChatGPT, right? Well, I'll use, again, using ChatGPT, right? That title, right? There's the title, the description, right? And again, I'm not going to go through this in detail because we've done it before, right? But this is where you set up that schema. And so this is for your catalog. So before, when I showed you before, where there was that little setting in the sales channel, there was a little bit more control for like, well, maybe I want to send these products and not these products. For right now, today, here, April 24th, 2026, it's kind of an all or nothing game if you're using this interface. And I'm putting that disclaimer up for it because there is another way to do this integration, and it's going to require somebody like us, like an agency or a company or somebody who goes in, well, if I want to have a little bit more control, there is a way to create a catalog, get an API key, and feed this information into ChatGPT or into any of the LLMs differently. But if you're not savvy, or if you're not working with somebody like Sunrise Integration, your control is basically map my products, hit save, and everything going to this entire catalog is being sent to I don't want to say ChatGPT, but anybody who's subscribing to this process, Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, they're all just tapping into this catalog. So at the moment, it's kind of an all or nothing game if you just want to do it via this WYSIWYG control. If you are so inclined or tech savvy, or if you want to reach out to Sunrise Integration and you want to do something that's maybe a little bit more sophisticated, there is this catalog option here. There is a way to say, you know what? I want to control my catalog a little bit more. I need to have, and I think what you were alluding to here, just a subset or a collection of products. How can I do that? Well, someone's going to have to go in and work with you on that. And this is what this tool is about here. You can go into the back end of your store, you can create a catalog, and you'll notice here, I have the ability to really control what I want to do. Which products, selecting a specific store, setting up my taxonomy, selecting specific queries, right? We can get really sophisticated and very, very, very specific. However, some of you may already notice, right, and some of you may even be recoiling in fear, the fact that you see all this code here on the right-hand side, and that's exactly it. This is a code level, right, exactly. Someone has to write code, somebody has to do this. So if your eyes are already going cross-eyed because you see all this code on the screen, this is probably not for you. You would more most likely in this camp where I'm just gonna go here, I'm just gonna map it. For right now, at least, you kind of get everything. This tool, as you saw here from before, is something that, at some point may or may not be coming back to give you better control. I can't really necessarily speak to that, but for right now, it's all or nothing. But frankly, great. You know what? All of your products are being sent and you don't even have to do anything for it. That's pretty cool. That's a nice thing to have. And for right now, that's what you got. Everything's going there, right? And it's there. So great. All of my products are being sent. I showed you what it looks like inside of ChatGPT, but the important thing to think about now is, well, what is the result of that? And like we said earlier, every product from every store is being sent always. So now you've got hundreds of millions, I think that's a very fair number, easily hundreds of millions, if not more, of products that are in this pool. So how are you going to be able to stand out? And this is exactly what Patrick alluded to earlier. Your visibility now is more important than ever, right? You have to be able to tell these large language, the LLM models, right, what is making your product stand out. Why should the agentic, the prompts for these products and the pool from which these agentic storefronts are pulling information, why should your product be relevant? I tell you right now, if all you have is a title and this really short description that's like, great shirt, the shirt's blue, and here's a price, forget it. You are not going to show up in any of this stuff. I'm telling you right now, sorry, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but the truth of the matter is it is not. Data quality, first box, extremely important. You need to make sure you have clean information, structured information, and it has to be rich information. And obviously we're not talking about money, but we're talking about quality. You have to have detailed information. And again, if you've been in some of our other past OTs, we've talked about this question and answer kind of paradigm. If you are selling, in this case, like we saw before, these skin creams, if you're selling these skin creams, what kind of questions do customers ask about it? Is it sensitive? Will it irritate my pores? Will it clog this? Who knows, right? Whatever the case may be, if you can answer those questions in your description, you're ticking this first box. Great quality of information, and now you're encroaching into this next box, which is clarity of information, right? So it's not just about having everything structured and clear, but are you giving good clarity about it? Why is this product better? Why should I use it? What problems does it solve? Because if we go back to what we saw here, that's the question people are asking. I have this, I have that. How can I get something to help me with this? So it's a very specific question. And that's how people have their intimate relationships with these chatbots. Before Google, sensitive skin cleanser, right? You're writing fragments, right? It's very fragmented. Now AI has created a more intimate relationship. And not only that, but if people who are using your models a lot, like ChatGPT, for example, it remembers. So the next time I say, hey, I'm looking for some skincare, it's going to remember that I like sensitive skin. Or it's going to remember, hey, I need size something shoes, or I like a soft shoe or a hard shoe. It's going to remember these things. So that's going to be extremely important. So your relationship with the models is much more intimate. So it has to answer those questions. So you need to make sure that you are answering those questions, right? You want to answer those questions, because once you do that, you are giving, again, very structured signals, very structured information to the models, so it can, in fact, recommend your store. Right? It has to know, because if you look at everything that's in here, right? Look at this detail here. It's talking about this cleanser and pH balanced and all this stuff. This is coming from Sephora. This is coming from their product, right? Gentle cleanser, how much it costs, all this stuff, best overall, best budget options. This is you telling them what to answer people. So again, we can't discount how important it is for you to make sure that you don't just have the bare minimum. And for those of you who've been with some of our previous ones, or if you want to look back on YouTube and see, GEO, generative engine optimization, is the key word. That is the buzzword of the year, probably, right? At the end of the year, GEO is going to be at the top of that list of the buzzwords. Now, I've seen a couple of people calling it something else. I don't want to confuse the world. GEO is what it's called. That's what it's going to be. It's not going to be called. We've decided. It's not GEO. I think that's a car. But generative engine optimization, just like SEO is SEO, this is GEO. Learn it, love it, live it. It's going to be the most critical piece for what it is that you need to do, right? So what does that?
I really like, sorry.
Please.
I was just going to jump in. I really liked your point about, ChatGPT, since it's kind of the example of the day. I mean, for users of that LLM, like, it is building a profile on each and every individual person. So, whether or not people are getting that granular with the questions they're asking, ChatGPT is asking on their behalf, right? It's taking into context all the other questions and information it has on people. So I think there's so many routes to go down in terms of how you can apply that reality, but I think it's definitely something to keep in mind for your business here, to see unique ways that you can make your product stand out, with the understanding that ChatGPT has all sorts of context on the people asking these questions, and they might benefit from your product for a reason that they're not even aware yet. So yeah, more of a philosophical conversation. At some point, it gets so obscure to talk about these things, but it's just, I think, a critical point, that the contextual awareness of these models.
Yeah, and that's a great point, too. Again, you want to answer a bunch of questions, but luckily the LLM model, again, let's just use ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is smart enough to say, okay, well, this person is asking a certain kind of question. They they can almost help the process, right? They can almost say, oh, we think this person has, sensitive skin or something. Maybe they said, oh, I just had a sunburn. Can you recommend a good cream, right? Well, what does that mean exactly? ChatGPT is smart enough to say, oh, they have a sunburn. That means their skin is sensitive. I should go find a sensitive. So that's one way that using a chatbot differs from Going to Google. Google just says, give me those keywords. The chatbot has some smarts and some thinking about it, which is also why a different product could show up even though you're asking subtly the same thing. And this is why this is a whole different world than just regular Google searches, right? Context matters. Subtleties matter here. There is pseudo thinking happening, right? We all know these people, they're not really thinking. I'm a computer nerd. I got to be careful here, right? They're not really thinking, right? Like you and I think, but this artificial intelligence is being applied to it. So oftentimes what seems like very similar searches can return very different products. So you need to make sure that you're answering enough questions, giving enough context that you could show up in all of these different places, right? You have to make sure you're doing the right things. What do you need to do? What do we recommend that you do? Start by optimizing your product data. You got to go in, make sure titles, descriptions, all that kind of stuff is there. It's smart, it's clean, it's set up correctly. You need to make sure that that exists, right? Because this catalog that's being created, whether you like it or not, it's there by default. I think I saw a question here that kind of popped up about it. You don't need to download an app anymore. You don't need to configure anything else. Like I said up front, you may have missed it from the beginning. You just get it. It's part of your Shopify plan. You don't need to get a separate storefront agentic, plan or, bolted onto what you've got. It's there. You got it. So start optimizing now. Whether you realize it or not, your products are being syndicated potentially now. They're just not going to show up because you haven't done the things that we're about to talk about here in a second, which is start by optimizing GEO, generative engine optimization, going through, making sure you've got good titles, making sure you've got good descriptions, your images, like you saw, the images are showing up here in ChatGPT. Now imagine if this image was terrible looking image, right? I'm not going to want to click on this if it's weird or skewed or doesn't show the full product or something like that, right? Very important. That's extremely important pieces of it. So you want to really start by optimizing your product data. This is an important piece for it, right? That product data is only one part of it though, right? You also want to make sure that your site in general has additional contextual information, blogs, FAQs, all this other stuff that's signaling to the models. Because again, the models are smarter than that. They're not just going to look at the one keyword. They're going to look at your whole site. They're going to look at your whole page, right? They're going to say, okay, are they answering the right questions? Is there an FAQ? Does this seem like the right thing, right? Are they in fact a skincare brand or are they a hydrochemical company, right? They need to know, like when you say, oh, what are a good, types of cleansers? Am I cleaning a drain or am I cleaning my face, right? So that context matters. You can't just use the word cleanser. You need to say skin care, sensitive skin, sunburn. That comes from optimizing product data and optimizing your site, optimizing everything that's on side of your site. And all of that is GEO. And I'm going to take a minute here. Sorry, we just got to do it and plug that this is what we, Sunrise Integration, can help you do. We have SEO capabilities, of course, but more importantly, we have this GEO capability. So everything that I'm talking about here, and I'll show you in a minute how you can prompt and check what you've got, is based off of this. This is the new keyword. This is the new buzzword. If this is something you're not doing or you don't know how to do, reach out. Patrick, if you want to drop our link in the chat for everybody, reach out to Patrick. We can help you out. But this is your step one. This is what you need to do, right? Everything is changing. This GEO is critical to this entire process. And so we can certainly help you out with that process, optimize everything. And this is what you need to do now. You need to make sure that all of this stuff is there, in addition to, of course, making sure that the storefront is set up. And that storefront includes that catalog that we just talked about now. You want to make sure that you've got your catalog set up, catalog is structured, catalog is mapping. If you want to get more sophisticated, like I showed you before, and you want to say, hey, Sunrise, we want to do this, right? We want to be very hyper-focused. Because I'll tell you right now, the more sophisticated brands like the Sephoras and those types of guys, maybe I'm letting a little cat out of the bag. They're doing this. They're getting way more sophisticated because they can control what gets sent, what fields get mapped, concatenating fields, putting things together, right? Which you can't do in Shopify. Shopify's UI is designed to be very simple. This is for the big boys. If you really want to say, take this description, this catalog, this title, this meta field, this, put it together, and that's what we send to the models. That's what this is for. So if you're looking to kind of compete with the big boys, reach out to us. We'll help you set up this particular catalog because this is how you're going to get the big guys really do it in this particular way. Go
One
ahead.
thing I just want to add as far as the GEO optimization and operating within maybe the more simplified version of this, as far as how your store interfaces with ChatGPT is, since we're using that example. I think there's still I mean, areas of change or areas of opportunity, right? So I think there's, if you take an optimistic view of this and really, get ahead of the curve, I think there's a lot of green space for merchants to win against their competition simply because they're doing things quicker. And I think it's worth calling out a big part of the SEO and GEO optimization services is the competitive analysis part of that. So we will look at all the folks that you would consider key players, and obviously we would contribute in terms of finding out other merchants that you may not even realize you're in direct competition with, and go through and understand what they're doing on their site in terms of the content and keywords, so that we can help find areas where it would be easier for you to compete and get shown in these models as people are asking questions. So just
Yeah.
worth calling out. The
No,
competitive analysis is a big part of that.
It's a very, very great point, and it actually leads really well here into kind of our last section, which is test and verify, right? You need to know whether or not your site is even showing up or the right products are showing up, right? And you can either kind of figure it out yourself, or like Patrick said, use our service. This is one of the things that we do, right? You need to understand what does it look like, right? Just like you Google your own company now, you're going to need to go to these services, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, all these ones, and ask. Here's a couple ideas, right? You want to do a couple different things: category site searches, price per searches, online intent, right? Here's a couple prompts that we suggest that you try. And these are some of the things that we will help you with in our process, right? So, like, for example, recommend insert your product category store, right? Recommend a store that sells boots. Recommend a store that sells, swim goggles. Who knows, right? Start by that. Start by a very broad category. Are you showing up? Is your product there, right? Then move on to something like price point. Hey, ChatGPT, can you recommend what's the best, insert your product name, for X number of dollars, right? What's the best shirt, or I guess that's a bad example. What's the best, tennis racket for under $50, whatever, right? I'm pulling stuff out of the thing and it's in here, but replace your product with what you see here and see what happens, right? Where can I buy insert product here online, right? Where can I buy, great looking eyeglasses? Where can I buy sunglasses online? Do this. This is step, I keep saying this is step one, right? I've said that so many times, but this is an early step that you need to do. Before we do any of this, what is the baseline here? What does it look like? What do you have? How is it showing up? This is an important thing to do, and this is what we'll do. Again, I don't want to overly plug us, but ultimately this is the step process that we do in our generative engine optimization process. Is we start with this. What does it look like? What are you getting? What's happening?
Yeah, no, I dropped the link into the chat earlier. If wanted to talk about this or anything else related to Shopify, free consultations available for anyone that would like to chat. And there's a variety of ways that we can help you in the form of audits for particular things like this. AI and GEO readiness, and also our Shopify success plans that we could get into. So I don't want to go too deep in any of that right now. Just to say that we work with brands and merchants of all shapes and sizes, and we look forward to hearing from you if you wanted to reach out.
I'll end it by saying that customers' shopping methods or habits are changing, and people are going to ChatGPT, going to Gemini, all the Perplexity, all of those Claudes, everything that's out there, right? That is starting to see, the numbers are saying that this is in fact where people are going. And I believe we even have a little blog that we wrote about this. Again, if I can just prompt us one more time. Yeah, our latest blog that we wrote here kind of talks about that. And we give some stats and we give some numbers about that phenomenon, right? Are you ready for AI? So read our blog, check it out, see if you're ready. But the numbers are pretty staggering. People are using this, and this is where they want to, where and how they want to shop. So get ready. That's it. Thank you guys for your time. As always, I'll give one last chance for any questions to pop up.
Looks like we're all clear.
All right. Thank you all. Take care. We'll see you on the next Shopify OT. Bye-bye.